Credit?
What if David Warrior did that one?
Oh. Nice. One night, in his head, a man dreamed a tale that said, men are originally born possessing a certain individual talent which, for the beneficial growth of all, they lose, through lack of use and their attention being turned elsewhere. And even though all goes collectively well, a few men here and there seem to have retained a faint memory of the ability that was lost, and some even search for ways to regain its use. The man then awoke from his dream, but its story lingered in his mind. One man had two stumps in his backyard side by side, and whenever he'd try to beat one of them down into the ground, the other one would try to disappear into the ground also. And the viewer writes, "Don't you have that last story somehow confused? Seems like you somehow got it backwards or something. I don't know, it just don't sound right." As that most insightful 7th century mystic so pertinently said, there are no things that don't sound right, only men who listen to their own thoughts and are thus unable to ever avoid confusion. And the viewer says, "Okay, I'll give it a try." Okay now. See, whenever he'd try to beat down one of the stumps, the other one would try also to sink down. I'm trying. There was a deaf and dumb man who was also without sight or hands. He had a vision, but who could he tell? What has he to do with you and your thoughts? Several classes of ships plow the seas. One allows passengers to dance to one song while singing another. And there's one which claims it does not permit this, but which, by all reports, does not actually enforce the ban. And then, just over there, just at the edge of the horizon, is apparently another craft which, rumor has it, ripped out their dance floor and put all the musicians and gigolos to work mopping floors. Whenever this topic is mentioned, there's always a few people who will ask how they might make it out to that last ship. And here are a few tips, harboring hints. You can't swim out to it. No one can row you out to it. It won't even come over to pick you up. And, well, you get the idea. Habit and consistency pursued for no sake other than their own is a primitive attempt at magic, no matter how sophisticated the pursuer. Next verse. Why is it not only pleasurable to look at photographs of people, but to look at them over and over again? So mulled, one man, given somewhat to mulling. Should I really say that the certain activities I pursue sometimes puts me in a different state of consciousness? Or should I say that I think that I'm in a different state of consciousness? And after mulling on this for a bit, he became agitated, confused, and concerned, and was just about to wish that he had never even thought about it. When? The whole question suddenly struck him squarely in the old mulling faculty, and he began as being perfectly pregnant with a much further reaching possible significance regarding his always assumed distinction between grand, glorious consciousness and plain old thinking. And as he wandered off, scratching his head and grunting, a bystander remarked about how easy it is for us to overlook the power of positive mulling. As that illustrious 8th century mystic so aptly said, there are no dirty questions only dirty underwear. Here is a question with a secret within. Find what it is and your troubles will end. Can words cause pain? If you can answer yea or nay, you looked at the sun without seeing light. There was once a man who wanted to see the interior jungles of Borneo, but every time he'd make it onto the beach of that isle, he'd find himself turning back and returning home. But after each such episode, he became even more anxious to complete the journey, the extraordinary beauty of the outlying beaches reasonably causing him to conclude that the interior must surely be the planet's singular sight. Then, one day, he finally found himself slap in the middle of his dreamed-of destination. And after the initial excitement and surprise had worn off, he looked around and thought, it's not at all like I imagined. As that notable 9th century mystic so neatly noted, there are no bad geography students, only men in new locales who look for a Holiday Inn. No fixed abode, said one man. The wider becomes my recognition of what takes place with my thoughts, the more I am convinced that the proper address for me is no fixed abode. One day, one man passed out from the fumes and experienced the following vision. He saw a world in which all creatures were born painted green, but a few of them developed a belief that they were in fact purple. Oh, they looked green like everyone else, but they felt that somewhere deep down they were meant to be purple, and that it was their fateful duty to bring it out and to the surface so as to fulfill their rightful destiny. And a few of them succeeded, only to discover that the very instant they became purple, they immediately switched right back to green. Albeit a more intense, radiant green than before, but green nonetheless. When the fumes had worn off and the man regained normal consciousness, he was much relieved. Wouldn't you be? Thoughts are the same as circumstances. When circumstances don't exist, thoughts don't exist. When thoughts don't exist, circumstances don't exist. And when these comments about them cease to exist, so does whatever you think they mean. There was once a man who concluded that his head lived ofttimes in a fog. So he decided to take a trip and got on a train which soon traveled into a long, dark tunnel. So there he was, his head already in a fog, and now on top of that, his whole body on a train which was in a dark tunnel. Well, sir, he didn't care for the situation at all. No, sir, he did not. So he called for the conductor, who came over to his seat and poked out his eyes and ears, which made the man either exceedingly happy or else pretty upset, according to just how much you understand by now regarding the matter of being enlightened. As that formidable 4th century mystic so forcefully phrased it, there are no stories which actually tell a story. Only men who can realize what the hell's going on when it's pointed out to them. One man said, I only seem to have 2 flavors of consciousness, cottage cheese and salsa. There was once a man who lived in Cleveland who had struggled so long to change his place of residence that one day life finally said to him, I'll give you your choice. You can either be moved to Istanbul, on the other side of the world, or you can remain here and I'll cause you to lose all concern over the conditions in Cleveland. One day while dozing under a tree, a dream came to a man wherein he saw two scenes. In one, man left a beautiful garden for places not so attractive, while in the other, such a garden departed from him. Metaphors can get you on the bus, but they won't make it run. Sometimes when irritated and out of sorts, one man would say to himself, check back with me when I'm in a better mood. And sometimes he thought he heard a faint whinny in response. One man always dreamed of having his very own flashlight. But then when he got one, he wasn't even sure what it was. A man told a mystic, trying to be a mystic confuses me. And the mystic replied, then stop. And the man said, I can't. And the mystic said, then don't. And the man pondered this for a moment and said, okay, I won't. Thanks. Whenever the temperature would drop, this one man would get colder. One man always dreamed of having his very own heater. But then when he got one, he couldn't tell if he was any warmer or not. Check the never-ceasing popularity of alcohol and drugs to see even ordinary men's fascination with states of consciousness other than the norm. More people are would-be mystics than they imagine. How many might that be? That might be everyone, my friend. That could be everyone. One day a man in Dallas awoke from a sleep in which he had dreamed that he was in Shangri-La, in Shanghai. Then, while still recalling the conditions of the Shanghai in his dreams, slipped back to sleep, now dreaming that he was snoozing in Shanghai and dreaming he was in Dallas. Ordinary people only attempt ordinary things. Just because your thoughts continually think about you does not mean that they are in any way concerned about you. This is perhaps the grand scam of all times in the life of man. One man had a radio. For those of you up north, a radio. One man had a radio which stayed tuned to one station. One station which gave him all of the news and information he needed to run his life. Then one day he discovered he could turn to another station which, heretofore, he wasn't aware existed. The more he turned to this new station, the more he enjoyed it, and began to wish, in fact, that he could stay on its frequency permanently. And he tried and he tried. He tried and he tried. He tried and he tried. Oh yeah, did I mention that this is a fairy tale? If you play with words, words will play with you. And here's a tip. One of you is a foregone loser. And a viewer writes, but isn't that dependent on how much you understand? I couldn't have put it better myself. After years of struggle, as he began to recognize what was really going on and what his efforts were all about, one man thought, weird. Then when he got even further along and began to really realize what the whole thing was about, he thought, nah, super weird. One boy grew up to be a man, and as a man grew into the understanding that he could either read a book or read his own mind. Hint, to help the confused make a choice. There is no end to libraries. One night, a man took a strange new drug which put him into a visionary dream, in which he perceived the different states of consciousness possible for man. One of them being him in a slight trance, and another being man in a slight trance, but aware of it. Then, before he could dream of another, the drug failed and he awoke. As that comprehensive 6th century mystic so suitably put it, there are no conditions of non-awareness, only men who stand on one foot, listening to one station as they pound away on that stump. As the creature stepped off the alien spacecraft, the first thing he said was, "The great thing about a real decision is that you're stuck with it. But," this is a follow-up but to the last item, "but, in a way peculiar to say, at one point you need to abandon work on yourself to continue it properly." All thoughts are composites, combinations of other diverse elements. And as everyone knows, alloys are impermanent in nature. Legend tells of a place at which one time had two major and competing mystical schools, one of which hawked magical glasses to look through, which they called enlightenment, and the other one which also had glasses available, but which had nothing in the frames. Legend goes on to say that most people who hear this legend won't understand it at first. But hey, if you could understand immediately, it'd be reality and not a mere legend, right? I said, right? Flight tip. Never assume you've flown as high as you're ever going to fly. And finally, after having the man deny any knowledge of the affair, the inspector knelt down beside what he had spotted on the floor and, pointing to it, demanded, "Then how do you explain this?" To which the man replied, "How do you explain anything?" Okay. Would you mind?